You know how family gatherings often bring out everyone's real colors? Well, this past Thanksgiving, mine did just that in the most unexpected way. Picture this: turkey on the table, laughter filling the air, everyone pretending we are the perfect family. That is, until my sister found out I had $12 million. Dollars. Yes, 12 million. Before I could even put down my glass of wine, the atmosphere shifted like a storm rolling in. Suddenly, my mom, dad, and sister became financial experts overnight, all telling me what I should do with my money. And by what I should do, they mostly meant give it to Rachel, because they said she deserved it more. Honestly, it felt surreal standing there listening to those words. That money didn't drop from the sky or come from a lucky break. It was the product of years of hard work, long nights no one else knew about, and being quietly determined to build something of my own. But before I dive into what happened that Thanksgiving, I want to start at the beginning, because this story didn't start with a bank account or a trust fund. It started the night my sister was born. I'm Sarah, and sharing this story feels like finally releasing a secret I've held tight for years. Growing up, my family wasn't warm and fuzzy, but my parents were there. Mom helped me with homework, dad would take me fishing sometimes. It wasn't perfect, but it was normal enough. Then, one night when I was 8, everything changed. Aunt Kelly showed up at 2 in the morning, waking me up to pack a bag. Mom was in the hospital. There was a lot of hushed talking, no real explanations. Rachel was coming early, 2 months early. The next few weeks blurred into hospital visits and whispered conversations. I remember staring at her tiny figure through the glass, so small and fragile, hooked up to machines that beeped all night. I wasn't allowed to touch her or even get too close. And that's when it started. The invisible wall between us grew thick. Once Rachel finally came home, everything about our house changed. Mom became obsessed with cleanliness, sanitizer stations everywhere, bleach fumes lingering in the air. Anytime I showed the slightest sign of being sick, I was whisked off to Grandma Marie or Aunt Kelly's house for days. At first, it was kind of fun. Grandma baked cookies. Aunt Kelly had an amazing collection of Nancy Drew books. But kids aren't blind. After a while, I realized being sent away wasn't an adventure. It was to keep me away from Rachel, like I was a danger. That feeling of being excluded, pushed aside, it never really left me. I was 8 years old when my sister Rachel was born, and it was the moment everything in my family shifted for all the wrong reasons. Before that, life was simpler. My parents might not have been overly affectionate, but I knew I existed in their world. Mom helped me with homework. Dad took me fishing every so often. We weren't perfect, but I was their kid. But Rachel's early arrival changed the whole dynamic. She was born 2 months premature and spent weeks hooked up to machines in the hospital. So fragile, she looked like a tiny doll rather than a real baby. I wasn't allowed to touch her or get too close. I remember feeling like an outsider in my own home. When they finally brought Rachel home, the house felt like a sterile bubble. Mom went into full germ control mode with industrial strength bleach and hand sanitizer everywhere. The smell of disinfectant still haunts me. Whenever I sneezed or showed even the tiniest hint of a cold, I got sent away, packed a bag, and headed to Grandma Marie or Aunt Kelly's like clockwork. At first, I loved spending time with Grandma. She baked the best cookies, and Aunt Kelly's Nancy Drew books were a welcome escape. But it didn't take long for me to realize I wasn't being sent away to have fun. I was being kept away. My presence was a threat, so I became the invisible child in the family, the one whose triumphs barely registered. I tried so hard to earn attention the right way: straight A's, impressive science projects, good behavior. But the harder I tried, the more invisible I became. I remember at 12, I spent months learning a piano piece for the school talent show. I was ready to perform Bridge Over Troubled Water, all practiced and nervous. But the night of the show, Rachel was sick with a mild fever, and suddenly no one came to support me, not a single familiar face in the audience. 2 weeks later, the entire family was there for her 15-minute flute recital. And believe me, They clapped like she just performed a rock concert, even though she basically butchered hot cross buns. Rachel mastered the system early on. She learned how to be sick, to avoid school or important events, and make everyone drop everything for her. Mom would call her teachers to get deadline extensions whenever Rachel worried about tests. Meanwhile, I was left trying to survive on my own. With my world shrinking, my room became my sanctuary. It was the one place Rachel didn't invade. She was allergic to my lavender air freshener, so at least I had that peaceful corner to myself. Even though I was the invisible one, Grandma Marie became my anchor. She recognized me, asked about my day, and introduced me to vintage jewelry, a passion that would change my life later on. But at home, my existence was rewritten to fit a narrative. Rachel needed more attention because of her rough start, and I understood that. But kids don't always understand why love feels so conditional and why being healthy or independent somehow made you less deserving. Those years shaped me. The silent message that I was a threat or inconvenience didn't just disappear overnight. Yet, in the quiet, I learned one crucial thing. When no one is your cheerleader, you. High school was a mixed bag for me. While some kids flourished socially and academically, I mostly kept to myself, focused on using my time to build a future where I wouldn't be invisible anymore. My sister Rachel, meanwhile, was building something very different, a kind of social empire in middle school and high school, heavily supported by our parents at every turn. It was like watching two completely different worlds unfold in the same family. I worked harder than ever, not because I wanted to compete with her directly, but because I had to prove to myself that I was more than the family's invisible child. I became the girl with the perfectly organized desk color coded notes, detailed study plans, practically a walking organization magazine. Rachel even teased me, calling me Rain Man, but I didn't mind much. At least I had control over something. No one was monitoring my successes or failures closely anyway, so I was free to dive into things that mattered to me. I joined as many clubs as possible while balancing a part time job at Carson's Diner. Shout out to Carol, the owner, who always remembered my birthday when my own parents forgot. I discovered Debate Club, and that's where I found my true voice. There's this incredible rush when you can calmly dismantle someone's argument and hold your ground with facts and composure. Debate also taught me negotiation skills without me even realizing it, skills that later turned out to be invaluable. Senior year was different. While Rachel excelled in soccer playing for the C team, often sidelined, I hit a major milestone, the perfect SAT score. Not just a good score, perfect, 1,600. Less than 1% of test takers manage it. I stared at the results at first, thinking it was an error. I ran home to tell my parents, only to be met with indifference. Mom was helping Rachel with her English homework, barely looking up. Our conversation went something like this: Mom, I got a perfect SAT score. That's nice, honey, but Rachel's trying to study. Rachel chimed in with a smug, yeah, some of us have different learning styles. Mom quickly swept in, Rachel, sweetie, don't stress, you're a different kind of learner. I still have the hard copy of those results, tucked away somewhere. It never made the fridge. Rachel's C plus in English, that got the VIP fridge magnet spot with the "We're so proud of you" message. College applications happened quietly. I didn't tell a soul. I applied to 15 schools on my own, wrote essays, gathered recommendations, did financial aid paperwork. My guidance counselor, Mr. Chin, was my MVP, helping me navigate things my parents couldn't or wouldn't. Acceptance letters rolled in from Harvard, Yale, Princeton, and Michigan, all with scholarships. I kept them locked away, knowing what would happen if Rachel got wind of it. She'd claim it meant losing family attention. When I received my full ride to the University of Michigan, Rachel joined the JV cheerleading team, and the family threw her a huge celebration dinner. Meanwhile, I ate microwave mac and cheese alone in my room, but that scholarship? It was my golden ticket out of invisibility. The day I officially accepted my scholarship to Michigan, I went to my favorite quiet spot in the local library, a fourth floor window seat overlooking the park. I sat there and cried, not tears of sadness, but relief. Finally, I was free. The conversation at dinner was expected but still painful. Michigan? That's so far, Mom said. What if Rachel needs you? And then the real kicker, don't expect us to help with expenses. Rachel's cheerleading competitions cost a fortune. Rachel burst into tears. Can I finally have Sarah's room? I need more space for my TikTok videos. The summer before college, I worked double shifts at Carson's Diner, saving every penny. Carol, the diner owner, became a real mentor, reminding me to always watch out for the genuine people in a world full of fakes. Baby, she told me, the ones who make the most noise usually have the least to say. Moving day came. My parents couldn't make it. Shocker, Rachel had a cheerleading competition out of state. Aunt Kelly drove me to campus, helped me set up my dorm, and handed me an envelope with $500, Grandma Marie's way of showing she was proud. Grandma had been quietly saving for months out of her Social Security checks. That first night in my dorm, sitting among unpacked boxes, I made a promise to myself. I would build a life so full and meaningful that being invisible would be impossible. Not to prove anything to my family, but to prove to myself that I mattered. College was a whirlwind of late nights, instant ramen, and the sweet taste of independence. I graduated summa cum laude, but again, my family barely noticed. They were too wrapped up in Rachel's college drama, hopping between schools. After college, I got an entry-level job at a prestigious auction house specializing in high-end estate sales. It wasn't glamorous work at first, documenting china and furniture, but it was honest. And remember those hours spent cataloging Grandma Marie's vintage jewelry collection? That spark of interest I developed as a lonely kid slowly became my passion and my career. Starting at that auction house was a turning point, not glamorous at first, but essential. I began with their estate sales division, logging endless china sets, vintage furniture, and what most people would call stuff. It was slow work, but it paid the bills and gave me a chance to explore my secret passion for vintage jewelry, the hobby Grandma Marie had sparked in me years ago. One day, we got the Kingston estate. Mrs. Kingston was an elderly widow with no children, leaving behind what was thought to be a huge collection of costume jewelry. As I sifted through the stack, one little Art Deco brooch caught my eye. It wasn't flashy, but something about its weight and its intricate clasp told me it wasn't just costume jewelry. That lunch break turned into hours of research, then evenings spent scouring online antique databases. No one would believe me, the new girl, if I told them we might have a treasure. So I prepared my case photos, historical data, maker's marks like I was getting ready for debate. When I finally brought it to my boss, Harrison, he barely looked up. We've cataloged those as costume pieces, he said. I showed him my findings. Slowly, the look on his face changed, and after verifying the marks, he started giving me other pieces to authenticate. The day that brooch sold for $47,000 was the moment things shifted for me. It meant I wasn't just a clerk, I was becoming an expert. With every new discovery, my confidence grew. I took online courses on gemology, spent weekends at estate sales, and meticulously documented my findings. My apartment turned into a jewelry scholar's dream walls, covered with prints of vintage hallmarks and certification guides. The Rothschild collection came about 2 years into my job, a massive, old money estate that everyone was buzzing about. Amidst the high-profile pieces, I spotted a fairly common Art Nouveau item that others overlooked. A deep dive revealed it was from a lost private French collector thought destroyed during World War II. That piece alone sold for $238,000. Harrison called me into his office, and I thought I was finally getting promoted. Instead, he said, Sarah, you're wasting your talent here. You should run your own authentication business. At first, I laughed it off. Start a business? With what money? But the idea took root, and I began taking on freelance projects on the side. Word spread, and soon private collectors and estate lawyers came knocking. Suddenly, my hobby wasn't just a job, it was a thriving side hustle. Months later, I took a big leap. I took out a loan against my car, emptied my savings, and rented a tiny office space over a Chinese restaurant, a room the size of a college dorm, smelling of kung pao chicken, with Wi-Fi that only worked in one corner, but it was mine. The first few months were terrifying. I'd wake at 4 a.m. sweating, crunching numbers to see how much longer I could survive. My office furniture was a card table from Goodwill and a chair I rescued off the curb. But thanks to my experience and contacts, I slowly built a reputation for accuracy and detail. Then came the big break, a Victorian era brooch collection owned by a family spanning 3 generations. After 2 weeks of nonstop work, I identified two rare pieces formerly misidentified as replicas. The owner paid my fee plus a 10% commission when the pieces sold $86,000, more than I'd earned in 2 years combined. From that moment, my phone wouldn't stop ringing. Private collectors, lawyers, even my old auction house sent me work. Harrison was probably the one quietly spreading the word. As my business grew, I faced a new challenge, keeping my success hidden from my family. They still thought I worked at some old-fashioned antique shop, dusting off forgotten trinkets. The truth was far from that, but I kept the secret like a private joke. At family dinners, Rachel would casually drop sarcastic comments like, "Oh, maybe Sarah's little shop can take this old jewelry I'm donating." Meanwhile, I had just authenticated a piece worth over $1 million that morning I never let on. Mom introduced me to guests as the daughter who works with old jewelry or something, completely underplaying what I actually did. Meanwhile, I was being quoted in Forbes, under my company's name, of course, and managing 3 offices in the city. Despite the success, the silence at family gatherings was almost deafening. I started enjoying the secrecy, playing little games with myself. I'd wear authentic Harry Winston pieces to family dinners, watching to see if anyone noticed. They never did. Rachel once spent 20 minutes bragging about her $200 Michael Kors watch while I discreetly wore a diamond necklace worth more than most cars. No one batted an eye. Most people would have wanted to shout it from the rooftops, but I found something better peace in knowing my achievements were mine alone. No one could take that away or use it against me. And then came that Thanksgiving, the one that changed everything again. We were gathered the same way we always were, pretending everything was fine. But that day, Rachel somehow discovered the truth about my $12 million fortune. The moment the secret slipped, everything exploded. Suddenly, my family became a pack of entitlement and demands. They told me I was selfish for keeping it hidden. They assumed I should share it because, after all, family should help family, right? Rachel, who had been handed advantages her entire life, suddenly claimed she times deserved times the money more. She argued she had struggled more and that I was holding out to hurt her. But it wasn't about greed for me. It was about control, about the years of being invisible and overlooked that made me fiercely protective of what I had built. I remember sitting there, hearing their accusations, feeling the weight of years of unfairness crashing down. But for the first time, I didn't back down. I stood my ground. Because that money wasn't just cash, it was every baby step I took alone, every late night I stayed silent, every failure and success unseen, and I refused to hand it over just because my family demanded it. After that Thanksgiving storm passed, things didn't magically get better, but I learned something important. Setting boundaries didn't just protect my finances, it protected my heart. I stopped bending to family expectations that never felt fair to begin with. I started stepping back emotionally, choosing when and how to engage. It wasn't easy, the guilt trips and subtle accusations never fully disappeared, but I realized my worth wasn't tied to their approval or my family's demands. Looking back, I see how those early years shaped me, how being invisible forced me to develop resilience, independence, and a fierce determination to carve out my own place in the world. It wasn't about revenge or proving anyone wrong. It was about creating peace within myself. The money, the success were just byproducts of that journey. Now, when I look at my life, it's not about what my family thinks or demands. It's about the woman I've become, someone who stands tall, who knows her value, and who refuses to be invisible any longer. And honestly, that's the best Thanksgiving gift I could ever ask for. Add some more section each 800 words, Living in the shadow of favoritism isn't just about missed celebrations or ignored achievements. It took a real emotional toll on me. The constant feeling of being invisible was exhausting, and it shaped how I viewed myself for many years. There were moments during childhood when I doubted my worth, wondering if love from my family came with conditions like being quiet, small, and unobtrusive. Knowing I wasn't the favorite twisted how I approached friendships and relationships later in life. I was always the one holding back, afraid to demand too much attention or affection. After all, if my own family couldn't see me, who else would? As a teenager, I poured myself into school and work, using achievement as a shield from loneliness. But even with success, I felt a quiet ache, a longing for recognition that seemed just out of reach. My accomplishments were overshadowed by the drama and praise lavished on Rachel, who never had to prove herself the way I did. That invisibility taught me lessons no one should have to learn, like how to speak up for myself when it felt uncomfortable, or how to fiercely protect my independence. But it also left scars. I often wondered if I'd ever truly belong, or if I was destined to play the background role in my own life. Through it all, I clung to small escapes, organizing Grandma Marie's jewelry, losing myself in books, or digging into hobbies that gave me a sense of purpose and control. Those moments kept me from breaking down completely, but the cost was high. I learned to expect little from those closest to me and to find strength within rather than outside. That strength eventually became my most valuable asset, setting me on a path to rebuild myself from invisibility to undeniable presence. Reflecting on my journey, I realize how much I've grown, not just financially, but emotionally and mentally. The years of neglect and favoritism forced me into a corner, but from that corner, I carved out space to thrive. One of the biggest lessons was learning the power of boundaries. Saying no to family demands wasn't easy, but it was necessary. It taught me that self respect comes first, that sometimes loving yourself means walking away or standing firm in the face of pressure. I also learned to embrace my independence without guilt. For so long, I felt funny for building a life separate from family expectations, but now I see it as a strength. Choosing my own path, making my own money, creating my own happiness, that's liberation. Another important lesson was the value of genuine connections. Family can be complicated, but true support often comes from unexpected places. Like Grandma Marie's quiet encouragement or Carol's kindness at the diner, those people saw me when others didn't. And I have made it a point to surround myself with people who truly care, who celebrate rather than compete. Most importantly, I learned that invisibility doesn't define you. We all have worth, whether or not the people closest to us recognize it. Sometimes finding your worth means finding yourself first and refusing to accept less. My story isn't just about money or family drama. It's about resilience, self discovery, and the power of claiming your own space in the world. If you're feeling invisible or overlooked, remember your voice matters, your story matters, and just like me, you can write your own next chapter. As this story winds down, I want to take a moment to reflect on everything I've shared. Life isn't just the sum of what happens to us, it's how we respond to those moments that truly shapes who we become. Growing up invisible in my own family was painful, confusing, and isolating. But looking back, I realized it also became the foundation for my strength. The challenges I faced, the favoritism, the constant feeling of being sidelined, and the endless struggle to be seen taught me something powerful: resilience, not the kind of resilience that comes from luck or privilege, but the kind that grows from deep within, forged in moments of silence and solitude. For years, I was defined by absence, absence of attention, absence of affection, absence of recognition, but I refused to let that define my future. I chose to be more, to build a life that reflected my worth, not my family's limited perception of it. In that sense, my invisibility was my greatest teacher. My journey from being the overlooked child to a successful entrepreneur and expert wasn't simple or easy. It took grit, sacrifice, and a lot of late nights when no one was watching but me. Each step forward was a quiet rebellion against the narrative that I didn't deserve to be heard or valued. And here's the truth that I want to leave with you. Success is not revenge, and it's not proof you are better than anyone else. Success is self acceptance. It's claiming your story and owning every part of it, the pain, the victories, and the moments in between. Money and achievements are tangible things, but what they represent is more important: freedom, confidence, and peace. When my family demanded a share of my wealth, it wasn't just about the money, it was about control, a way to keep me small, to keep me the invisible sister. But I stood firm because I knew that the woman I had become was worth more than their expectations or demands. I was no longer the kid constantly sent away or ignored. I was a whole person, built on years of perseverance and belief in myself. If there's one takeaway from my story, it's this: your worth isn't defined by how others treat you, it's defined by how you see yourself when no one else is watching. And sometimes the hardest battles we face are the ones fought quietly inside, away from the world's eyes. But those battles shape us into the people we're meant to be: strong, independent, and unapologetically ourselves. So, whatever you're going through right now, remember, invisibility isn't a life sentence, it's an invitation to discover your own strength, to create your own space, and to shine so brightly that no one can overlook you ever again. Before I sign off today, I want to share something that goes beyond my story. This is for anyone who has ever felt invisible, overlooked, or undervalued, whether by family, friends, or even themselves. Feeling invisible can break you down, but it can also build you up. It forces you to look inside, to learn to be your own biggest supporter when no one else is cheering. And that's a powerful place to be. You see, we often think love and recognition have to come from others, but the most important love, the love that never fades and the recognition that never wavers, comes from within. Choosing to believe in yourself when the world is quiet or even hostile is the ultimate act of courage. I hope my story reminds you that your voice matters, your dreams are valid, and your worth isn't determined by anyone else's approval. There's freedom in that truth: freedom to live for yourself, to chase what lights you up, and to build the life you deserve. It may not be easy, it won't happen overnight, but every step you take, no matter how small, is a victory. When I look back, I don't just see a girl who escaped invisibility. I see a woman who learned to love herself fiercely, who created her own family of friends and mentors, and who finally took the reins of her own life. You can do the same. You can walk away from what holds you back, set boundaries that protect your peace, and find or create a community that truly sees you. And when you do, the world can't help but notice. So, if you're feeling overlooked today, remember this: you are not alone and you are not invisible. The world may fail to see your light now, but your glow is waiting to burst forth. Keep nurturing it, keep believing in it, and never settle for less than the respect and love you deserve. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it inspires you to embrace your own strength and keep moving forward no matter what, because your story matters and your light is meant to be seen.